A poor farmer's daughter heals the soul of a heartbroken prince. In a quiet, picturesque village surrounded by rolling hills and golden fields, there lived a young woman named Lila. She was the daughter of a poor farmer who worked tirelessly to make ends meet. Though life had been hard for Lila and her family, she had a heart full of hope and a spirit that refused to be broken. Lila found joy in the simplest things, watching the sunrise over the hills, tending to her father's crops, and helping those in need within her small community. Lila's beauty was undeniable, but it wasn't just her outward appearance that drew people to her. It was her kindness, her ability to listen, and her unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of light. Despite their struggles, Lila's family was rich in love, and that love gave her the strength to face each day with a smile. Unbeknownst to her, a very different life was being lived not far from her little village. In a grand palace hidden behind towering gates and sprawling gardens, a young prince named Adrian resided. Adrian had once been a symbol of charm and strength, a beacon of hope for the kingdom. But tragedy had darkened his world. The loss of his beloved fiancée in a tragic accident had left him broken, and the light that once shone in his eyes had faded. Adrian's days were now filled with silence and solitude. He withdrew from the court, avoided public appearances, and spent most of his time wandering the palace gardens, lost in his thoughts. The weight of his grief was too heavy to bear, and no amount of royal privilege could ease the ache in his heart. The kingdom mourned alongside the prince, but no one could reach him, not his family, his advisors, or even his closest friends. One day, as fate would have it, Adrian decided to venture beyond the palace walls. He longed for an escape from the stifling confines of royal life, and so he rode his horse far from the palace, seeking solace in the peaceful countryside. It was on this journey that his path crossed with Lila's. Lila had been walking along a dirt road, carrying a basket of freshly picked vegetables to a neighboring village. She had always loved these quiet moments, surrounded by nature, where she could let her thoughts wander. But as she turned a corner, she spotted a figure slumped on the side of the road, a man dressed in fine clothing, his face pale and his expression one of utter exhaustion. Without hesitation, Lila rushed to his side. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, her voice filled with concern. The man looked up at her, his strikingly handsome face marred by an air of despair. He tried to speak but could only manage a faint nod. Realizing that he needed help, Lila didn't waste a moment. She offered him her arm and guided him to a shady spot under a tree. From her basket, she took out a flask of water and some bread, urging him to eat and drink. The man hesitated at first, but her kindness was impossible to resist. He accepted her help, and as he did, something stirred within him, a faint spark of gratitude, a flicker of life that he hadn't felt in a long time. Lila didn't press him for details about who he was or why he was there. She simply stayed by his side, offering quiet reassurance. And for the first time in months, Adrian felt a sense of calm wash over him. The stranger's kindness was a balm to his wounded soul, and though he couldn't bring himself to share his pain, he found comfort in her presence. As the sun began to set, Adrian realized he needed to return to the palace. He thanked Lila, his voice soft but sincere, and promised to repay her kindness one day. Lila only smiled and told him that no repayment was necessary. "Sometimes all we need is someone to show us a little kindness," she said, her words resonating deeply with him. Adrian rode back to the palace, but his thoughts were consumed by the young woman who had helped him. There was something about her, something pure and untainted by the complexities of the world he knew. She had shown him a glimpse of hope, and for the first time in a long while, he found himself wanting to hold on to it. Lila returned home, unaware of the impact she had made on the mysterious man she had encountered. She had simply done what her heart had guided her to do, never expecting that her small act of kindness would set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. In the days that followed, Adrian couldn't stop thinking about Lila. Her face, her voice, and her gentle spirit lingered in his mind. He realized that she had given him something he hadn't thought possible: hope. And so, he made a decision. He would find her again, not as a prince, but as a man seeking solace and connection. Little did Lila know that her quiet life as a farmer's daughter was about to be turned upside down. The stranger she had helped was no ordinary man, and their paths were destined to intertwine in ways she could never have imagined. Life carried on as usual for Lila in the peaceful village. Her days were filled with tending to her father's fields, helping her neighbors, and finding joy in the simple pleasures of rural life. She had almost forgotten about the mysterious man she had helped that day by the road. To her, it had been a fleeting encounter, a small act of kindness that she hoped had made a difference. But far from the simplicity of her village, Prince Adrian was consumed by thoughts of Lila. Her kindness had awakened something in him, a longing to reclaim the part of himself he thought was lost forever. Her words had stayed with him, and he found himself yearning to see her again. Yet he couldn't shake the fear of what she might think if she discovered his true identity. Determined to return to her without the weight of his title, Adrian made a plan. Disguising himself in simple clothing, he left the palace under the guise of a commoner. His advisors questioned his sudden interest in exploring the countryside, but Adrian waved off their concerns, insisting he needed time to himself. When Adrian arrived in Lila's village, he felt out of place among the modest homes and hard-working people. He knew he couldn't simply walk up to her and explain who he was. Instead, he decided to observe from a distance, unsure of how to approach her again without startling her. He spotted her one afternoon in the marketplace, her laughter ringing out as she chatted with the baker about an upcoming festival. Her joy was infectious, and Adrian found himself smiling for the first time in what felt like ages. He couldn't help but marvel at how someone with so little material wealth could radiate so much happiness. Adrian decided to linger nearby, hoping for an opportunity to speak with her. As luck would have it, Lila was carrying a heavy sack of grain back to her home when Adrian stepped forward to help. "May I carry that for you?" he offered, his voice gentle. Lila turned, surprised to see the man she had helped days ago. Recognition lit up her face, and she smiled warmly. "It's you. I'm glad to see you're doing better." Adrian nodded, grateful for her kindness. "I am, thanks to you. I never had the chance to properly thank you for what you did that day." Lila waved off his gratitude. "There's no need to thank me. Helping each other is just what we do around here." Adrian insisted on carrying the sack of grain back to her home, and along the way they talked. Lila shared stories of her life in the village, how her father had taught her the value of hard work, how she loved tending to the crops, and how she found beauty in the quiet rhythm of their rural life. Adrian listened intently, captivated by her simplicity and warmth. When they reached her modest home, Lila invited Adrian to stay for supper. Her father, a kind but weary man, was curious about the stranger but welcomed him with open arms. As they shared a humble meal of bread and stew, Adrian felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. There was no pretense, no expectations, just genuine kindness and warmth. After supper, Adrian lingered outside with Lila, watching the stars appear one by one in the vast sky. "You have a beautiful life here," Adrian said softly, his voice tinged with admiration. Lila smiled, gazing up at the stars. "It may not be much, but it's enough for me. Happiness isn't about what you have, it's about who you share it with." Her words struck a chord in Adrian's heart. He had spent so long surrounded by opulence and yet felt empty. Here, in the presence of this kind-hearted woman, he began to understand the true meaning of contentment. Before he left that night, Adrian made a promise to himself. He would return again not just to thank Lila, but to learn from her, to rediscover the joy and peace that had been missing from his life for so long. Unbeknownst to Lila, the stranger she had welcomed so warmly was not just a lost soul seeking solace, but a prince whose heart was slowly beginning to heal. And though she couldn't have known it yet, her simple act of kindness had set the stage for a journey that would change both their lives forever. In the quiet of the night, as Adrian rode back toward the palace, he felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, the shadows of his past didn't feel so suffocating. And as he thought of Lila's smile, he realized that perhaps, just perhaps, he had found the light he so desperately needed. Days turned into weeks, and Adrian found himself drawn back to the village time and time again. Each visit to Lila's home felt like a breath of fresh air, a reprieve from the heavy burden of his royal life. Disguised as a simple traveler, Adrian continued to spend time with her, helping with chores, sharing meals, and learning about her world. Lila, unaware of Adrian's true identity, welcomed him with open arms. She admired his willingness to help and his quiet determination to fit into their humble way of life. Though she often wondered about the sadness she glimpsed in his eyes, she chose not to pry, respecting his unspoken need for privacy. One sunny afternoon, Adrian arrived at Lila's home to find her tending to her small vegetable garden. Her hands were covered in soil and a smudge of dirt streaked her cheek, but her smile was radiant as she greeted him. "You're becoming a regular visitor," she teased, handing him a small spade. "Here, make yourself useful." Adrian chuckled and knelt beside her, eager to help. As they worked side by side, Lila explained the care and patience required to nurture the plants. "You can't rush the process," she said. "Everything has its own time to grow." Her words resonated with Adrian. He thought about his own life, the pain he had endured, and the healing he was slowly beginning to experience. Perhaps, like the plants in Lila's garden, his heart needed time to mend and bloom again. Over time, their conversations grew deeper. Adrian found himself opening up to Lila in ways he hadn't with anyone else. He shared bits and pieces of his life, carefully omitting details that would reveal his true identity, and spoke of the loss that had left him broken. Lila listened with compassion, her heart aching for the man who had become her friend. "It's okay to feel the pain," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire, "but don't let it define you. Life is still full of beauty, even in the midst of sorrow." Her words stayed with Adrian long after he left her home that night. They were simple yet profound, and they gave him a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. As their bond deepened, Adrian began to see Lila in a new light. She wasn't just a kind and compassionate woman. She was strong, resilient, and full of wisdom far beyond her years. Her presence had become a source of comfort and inspiration, and he found himself looking forward to every moment he spent with her. Lila, too, was growing fond of Adrian. There was something about him that intrigued her, a quiet strength that seemed to mask a deeper vulnerability. She appreciated his willingness to help her father with the farm work, his gentle humor, and the way he treated everyone in the village with kindness and respect. But even as their connection grew, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that Adrian was hiding something. There were moments when he seemed lost in thought, as if burdened by a secret he couldn't share. She didn't press him for answers, trusting that he would reveal the truth in his own time. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Adrian turned to Lila and said, "You've shown me more kindness than I deserve. I don't know how to thank you." Lila smiled, her eyes reflecting the warm hues of the setting sun. "You don't need to thank me, Adrian. That's what friends do. They're there for each other." Her words filled Adrian with a bittersweet longing. He wanted to tell her everything, to share the truth about who he was and why he had come to the village. But fear held him back. Would she see him differently if she knew he was a prince? Would the simplicity and honesty of their friendship be lost? For now, Adrian chose to keep his secret, cherishing the moments he spent with Lila and the solace she brought to his weary soul. He knew that the day would come when he would have to reveal the truth, but until then, he allowed himself to dream of a life where titles and burdens didn't matter, a life where he could simply be a man who had found a home in the heart of a poor farmer's daughter. Little did Adrian know, his visits to the village had not gone unnoticed. Rumors began to spread among the villagers about the mysterious stranger who spent so much time with Lila. Whispers reached the ears of those in the palace, and the fragile peace Adrian had found was about to be threatened. As the days unfolded, both Adrian and Lila would face challenges that would test their bond and reveal the depth of their feelings for one another. But for now, under the golden glow of the setting sun, they found comfort in each other's presence, unaware of the trials that lay ahead. Adrian's visits to Lila's village grew more frequent, and with each passing day, their bond deepened. He found solace in the simplicity of her world, while she found strength in his quiet determination to be part of her life. But the peace they shared was not destined to last. Back at the palace, Adrian's absence had not gone unnoticed. His advisors, already suspicious of his mysterious disappearances, grew restless. They feared the prince's prolonged retreats into the countryside could damage the royal family's reputation. Speculations began to arise, and whispers of a potential scandal circulated within the palace walls. One of the advisors, an ambitious man named Lord Clarence, decided to take matters into his own hands. Determined to protect the royal family's image, or so he claimed, he discreetly sent spies to track Adrian's movements. It didn't take long for the reports to return. The prince had been seen frequently visiting a small village, spending time with a common farmer's daughter. The revelation sent shockwaves through the palace. Adrian's parents, the king and queen, were alarmed by the news. To them, the idea of their son associating with a commoner, let alone developing feelings for one, was unthinkable. Meanwhile, in the village, Lila began to sense a change in Adrian. He seemed more distant, as if the weight of an unspoken truth was pressing heavily on him. She noticed the way his eyes lingered on her, filled with both longing and hesitation. One evening, as they walked through the fields under a sky sprinkled with stars, Lila decided to confront him. Adrian, you've been acting different lately, she said gently. Is there something you're not telling me? Adrian stopped walking and turned to face her, his heart pounding. This was the moment he had been dreading. He wanted to tell her the truth, to let her see him for who he truly was, but the fear of losing her held him back. Lila, he began, his voice trembling, there are things about me that I haven't told you, things that I'm not proud of. Lila placed a reassuring hand on his arm. Whatever it is, Adrian, you can tell me. I won't judge you. Her kindness only made it harder for Adrian to speak. He looked into her eyes, searching for the courage to continue, but before he could say another word, the sound of approaching horses shattered the moment. Adrian's heart sank as he saw a group of palace guards riding toward them. At their head was Lord Clarence, his expression stern and unyielding. Your Highness, Clarence said, his voice dripping with formality, it is time to return to the palace. Your prolonged absence has caused great concern. Lila's eyes widened in shock as the words sank in. Your Highness, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian turned to her, his face filled with regret. Lila, But before he could explain, Clarence interrupted. The prince has responsibilities far greater than this diversion. He belongs in the palace, where he is needed. The word diversion stung Lila like a blow. She stepped back, her heart racing as she tried to process what she had just learned. Adrian, the kind and humble man who had become her closest friend, was a prince. I need to go, Adrian said softly, his eyes pleading with Lila to understand. But I'll come back. I promise. Without waiting for a response, he mounted his horse and followed the guards, leaving Lila standing alone in the field. Her mind swirled with confusion and hurt. Everything she thought she knew about Adrian had been a lie. Back at the palace, Adrian faced the wrath of his parents. They demanded to know why he had kept his visits to the village a secret and warned him of the consequences of continuing to associate with Lila. You are a prince, the king said sternly. Your duty is to this kingdom, not to some common farmer's daughter. But Adrian refused to back down. Lila is not just some farmer's daughter, he argued. She's kind, selfless, and everything this world needs more of. She's taught me more about strength and happiness than I've ever learned here in the palace. The queen looked at her son with a mixture of concern and disappointment. Adrian, you have a responsibility to uphold the dignity of this family. If you continue down this path, you will bring disgrace upon us all. Adrian clenched his fists, anger and frustration boiling within him. He knew he couldn't abandon Lila, but he also couldn't ignore the immense pressure his family was placing on him. Meanwhile, in the village, Lila struggled to come to terms with the truth. She felt betrayed, but she also couldn't ignore the kindness Adrian had shown her and her father. Part of her wanted to believe that his feelings for her were genuine, but doubt lingered in her heart. As the days passed, rumors of the prince's connection to the village spread, reaching even the farthest corners of the kingdom. Lila became the subject of gossip and judgment, with some villagers accusing her of trying to manipulate Adrian for her own gain. Amid the turmoil, both Adrian and Lila found themselves at a crossroads. Their bond, once so pure and unshakable, was now threatened by the weight of their worlds. Would they find a way to overcome the obstacles between them, or would the forces of duty and expectation tear them apart? In their hearts, both Adrian and Lila knew one thing for certain. Their lives would never be the same again. The days following Adrian's departure were some of the hardest Lila had ever faced. The truth of Adrian's identity, coupled with the judgmental whispers of her neighbors, left her feeling isolated and overwhelmed. She had always her father noticed her quiet sadness, but chose not to press her for details. He simply offered her the comfort of his presence, letting her know she wasn't alone. Despite her turmoil, Lila threw herself into her work, hoping to find solace in routine. Adrian, on the other hand, was restless within the palace walls. Every corner of the grand estate reminded him of Lila, her laughter, her wisdom, and the way she made him feel alive. His duties as prince felt hollow without her. One evening, during a tense dinner with his parents, Adrian decided to take a stand. "I can't live like this," he declared, pushing his plate aside, "pretending to be the perfect prince while my heart is elsewhere. I won't abandon Lila." The king frowned, his expression stern. "You speak as though your feelings are more important than your responsibilities. A ruler must sacrifice personal desires for the good of the kingdom." "And what good is a kingdom if its ruler has no heart?" Adrian shot back, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The queen sighed, her face softening. "Adrian, we only want what's best for you. This girl, she comes from a world so different from ours. She may not understand the demands of royal life." "She understands more about life than anyone here," Adrian replied firmly. "She's taught me what it means to truly care for others, to find joy in the simplest things. And that's what this kingdom needs, a leader who remembers what it means to be human." Despite their disapproval, Adrian resolved to return to the village. That night, under the cover of darkness, he slipped out of the palace. The journey felt longer than usual, but the thought of seeing Lila again spurred him on. When he finally arrived, Lila was outside, tending to the animals under the dim glow of the lantern. She froze when she saw him, her heart racing. Part of her wanted to run to him, but the pain of his deception held her back. "Lila," Adrian said, his voice filled with sincerity, "I had to come back. I couldn't stay away." She set down the bucket she was holding and turned to face him. "Why, Adrian? Why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that you'd see me differently, that you'd push me away if you knew I was a prince. I didn't want the title to come between us." Lila crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "But it did come between us. You kept something so important from me, and now everything feels complicated." Adrian stepped closer, his eyes pleading. "I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. But I care about you, Lila, more than I've ever cared about anyone. These weeks with you have been the happiest of my life." Lila's resolve wavered. She could see the pain in his eyes, the genuine remorse in his words, but the fear of being hurt again held her back. "I don't know if I can trust you, Adrian. How do I know this isn't just a fleeting infatuation?" "It's not," Adrian said firmly. "You've changed me, Lila. You've shown me what it means to truly live, to love. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Tears filled Lila's eyes as she searched his face for answers. She wanted to believe him, to trust that his feelings were real. But her heart was still fragile, and the wounds of his secrecy had yet to heal. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the village. A group of royal guards appeared, their torches casting long shadows on the ground. At their head was Lord Clarence, his expression stern and unyielding. "Your Highness," Clarence said, his voice sharp, "you've defied the king's orders by coming here. You must return to the palace immediately." Adrian stood his ground. "I'm not leaving without speaking to Lila." Clarence's eyes narrowed. "This girl is a distraction, Your Highness. She has no place in your world." "She has every place in my world," Adrian retorted, "more than you or anyone else could understand." Lila watched the exchange, her heart torn. She didn't want to be the cause of more trouble for Adrian, but she also couldn't deny the feeling she had for him. "I'll go back with you," Adrian said finally, turning to Clarence. "But this isn't over." He looked at Lila, his eyes filled with determination. "I'll prove to you that my feelings are real. Just give me a chance." Lila nodded hesitantly, her emotions a whirlwind. As Adrian rode away with the guards, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them. Could love truly bridge the gap between their worlds? Or was their connection doomed to fail? For the first time in her life, Lila felt the stirrings of hope and fear in equal measure. And as the stars lit up the night sky, she found herself silently praying for a miracle. The days after Adrian's departure felt like a void for Lila. She tried to convince herself that life would return to normal, but nothing about her world felt the same anymore. Every corner of the farm seemed to echo memories of Adrian. His laughter, the way he looked at her, and the moments they shared. At the palace, Adrian was a man on a mission. His return wasn't just about duty. It was about proving his love for Lila to a court that viewed her as unworthy. His father, the king, called him to a private meeting the morning after his return. "You've embarrassed this family by defying us," the king said, his voice hard. "Running to that village, chasing after a girl who doesn't belong in our world. It's reckless." Adrian stood tall, unshaken by his father's anger. "I won't apologize for loving someone who has a kind and pure heart. Lila may not come from wealth, but she has something far more valuable: integrity, compassion, and strength. She's exactly what this kingdom needs." The queen, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Adrian, love isn't enough. Do you truly believe she can handle the pressures of royal life? The scrutiny, the expectations? It's a burden not everyone can bear." "She's stronger than anyone here gives her credit for," Adrian replied. "And if she's willing, I'll stand beside her through it all. But I need your support. I can't do this alone." The queen's expression softened, but the king remained stoic. "If you're so determined, you'll have to prove it. To us, to the court, and to the people. This isn't just about you, Adrian. It's about the future of this kingdom." Adrian nodded. "I will prove it. But first, I need to see her again." Meanwhile, back in the village, Lila was grappling with her feelings. Her father had noticed her growing restlessness and decided to confront her one evening as they sat by the fire. "You've been quiet lately," he said gently. "Is it about the young man?" Lila hesitated before nodding. "He's not just a young man, Papa. He's a prince. And I don't know if I can ever fit into his world." Her father took her hand, his grip firm yet comforting. "Lila, I've always believed that love is about more than circumstances. If this Adrian truly cares for you, he'll find a way to make it work. But you need to decide if you're willing to fight for it too." Lila looked into the fire, her thoughts swirling. Could she handle the challenges that came with loving a prince? And more importantly, could she trust Adrian to keep his promises? Her answer came sooner than expected. Late one evening, as she was preparing for bed, a knock echoed through the small house. When she opened the door, there stood Adrian, his eyes filled with determination. "Lila," he said softly, stepping inside. "I couldn't stay away. I've spoken to my parents, and I've made it clear that I won't let them or anyone else stand in the way of what I feel for you." She stared at him, her heart racing. "Adrian, this isn't just about us. Your world is so different from mine. How can we make it work?" "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "But only if you're willing to try. I want you to come back with me. To the palace. I want my parents and the court to see the woman I fell in love with. I want them to understand why you're worth fighting for." Lila's breath caught. The idea of leaving her simple life behind and stepping into the grandeur of the palace was overwhelming. But as she looked into Adrian's eyes, she saw sincerity and a deep longing that mirrored her own. "I'll go," she said finally, her voice steady. "But only if you promise me one thing." "Anything," Adrian replied without hesitation. "Promise me you'll never let me lose myself in your world. I don't want to become someone I'm not." Adrian took her hands in his grip firm yet tender. "I promise, Lila. I fell in love with the real you, and that's who I want by my side." The journey to the palace was nerve-wracking for Lila. Every mile brought her closer to an uncertain future. When they finally arrived, the grandeur of the palace left her awestruck. The towering arches, the glittering chandeliers, and the finely dressed servants. All of it was so far removed from her humble life on the farm. But what struck her the most was the cold stares of the courtiers as they passed. Whispers filled the halls, and Lila could feel their judgment weighing on her. Adrian, however, kept a protective arm around her, his presence a comforting shield. As they entered the grand hall, the king and queen were waiting. The court was assembled, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "This is Lila," Adrian announced, his voice strong and unwavering. "The woman I love, and I intend to make her my wife." A ripple of shock passed through the room. Lila felt her cheeks flush, but she stood tall, refusing to let their stares intimidate her. The king rose from his throne, his gaze piercing. "You've made your choice clear, Adrian. Now it's up to her to prove she belongs here." Lila took a deep breath, her resolve firm. "I may not come from wealth or nobility," she said, her voice steady, "but I know what it means to work hard, to care for others, and to stand by the people you love. If that's not enough for this court, then so be it. But I won't apologize for who I am." Adrian's heart swelled with pride as he watched her speak. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but in that moment, he was more certain than ever that they were meant to face it together. The queen exchanged a look with the king, her expression unreadable. "Let's see if your love can withstand the trials ahead," she said finally. Lila and Adrian shared a glance, their connection stronger than ever. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, they knew they had each other, and that was all they needed to begin the fight for their happily ever after. The days that followed were a whirlwind of challenges for Lila. Living in the palace was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Every step she took seemed to echo with judgment, every gaze from the courtiers heavy with disapproval. The luxuries around her felt foreign, almost suffocating, but Lila was determined not to let them overwhelm her. Adrian, as promised, stood by her side through it all. He introduced her to the customs of the royal court, teaching her the intricacies of etiquette and the expectations that came with being his chosen partner. But even with his support, Lila could feel the weight of the court's disdain. One morning, the queen summoned Lila for a private audience. Lila's heart pounded as she entered the queen's chambers, unsure of what awaited her. The queen sat by the window, her posture regal and her gaze sharp as she gestured for Lila to sit. "Do you understand what it means to be with my son?" the queen began, her tone calm but firm. "This isn't just about love. It's about responsibility, about carrying the weight of an entire kingdom on your shoulders. Do you think you're ready for that?" Lila met her gaze, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I understand that this is more than just a personal relationship, but I also believe that love is the foundation of strength. If Adrian and I support each other, we can face any challenge together." The queen studied her for a moment before nodding slightly. "Words are easy, my dear. Actions speak louder. The court will test you, and so will I. If you truly wish to be with Adrian, you'll need to prove your worth, not just to me, but to everyone here." Lila's resolve hardened. "I'm ready to prove myself, Your Majesty." The test began the very next day. The queen arranged a series of tasks meant to challenge Lila's resilience, intelligence, and grace under pressure. She was asked to oversee a charity event for the kingdom's poor, plan a formal dinner for foreign dignitaries, and even participate in a public speaking event in the royal gardens. Each task came with its own set of hurdles. The charity event required her to navigate complex political tensions among the kingdom's nobles. The dinner involved coordinating with the palace staff, many of whom were skeptical of her capabilities. And the public speaking event tested her confidence as she stood before a crowd of hundreds, sharing her vision for a more inclusive and compassionate kingdom. Through it all, Lila relied on the values she had learned growing up on the farm: hard work, humility, and kindness. She treated the palace staff with respect, won over the skeptical nobles with her sincerity, and inspired the crowd with her heartfelt words. Adrian watched her with admiration, his love for her growing with each challenge she faced. "You're incredible," he told her one evening after she successfully hosted the charity event. "Every time they try to tear you down, you rise even higher." "It's not easy," Lila admitted, her voice soft. "But I know why I'm doing this. It's not just for you, Adrian. It's for us, for the life we want to build together." But not everyone was as supportive. Lady Celeste, a prominent courtier with her sights set on Adrian, took every opportunity to undermine Lila. She spread rumors, planted doubts in the minds of the court, and even tried to turn the queen against her. You'll never truly belong here, Celeste told Lila one afternoon, her tone dripping with disdain. You're nothing but a peasant pretending to be a princess. Lila refused to let Celeste's words shake her. I don't need your approval to be with Adrian, she replied firmly. What matters is the love we share and the strength we give each other. Despite the obstacles, Lila continued to prove herself. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed by the king and queen. Slowly, their skepticism began to waver as they saw her genuine commitment to Adrian and the kingdom. One evening, after a particularly successful diplomatic event, the king approached Adrian in the grand hall. She's stronger than I gave her credit for, he admitted. But strength alone isn't enough. Does she have the endurance to withstand the long road ahead? She does, Adrian replied without hesitation, because she's not walking that road alone. I'll be with her every step of the way. As the days turned into weeks, Lila began to find her footing in the palace. The court's whispers grew quieter, replaced by grudging respect. Even Lady Celeste, though still hostile, couldn't deny Lila's resilience. But the biggest test was yet to come. The queen announced a grand ball to celebrate Adrian's return and introduce Lila to the kingdom. It would be the first time Lila would face the entire royal court as Adrian's chosen partner, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Adrian stood with her the evening before the ball, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. Are you ready for this? He asked, his voice filled with concern. Lila looked into his eyes, drawing strength from his unwavering support. I've come this far, Adrian. I'm not backing down now. As the night of the ball approached, Lila prepared herself for the challenge ahead. She knew that winning over the kingdom wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that love, true, unwavering love, was worth fighting for. And with Adrian by her side, she felt ready to take on the world. The grand ballroom glittered with opulence as the kingdom's elite gathered for the much-anticipated celebration. Chandeliers cast a golden glow over the crowd, and the sound of music mingled with the hum of conversation. This was not just any ball. It was the moment when Lila would step forward as Adrian's chosen partner. Lila stood at the top of the staircase, her heart racing as she took in the sight below. Her gown, a delicate creation of silken blues and shimmering silver, had been chosen to symbolize both her humble beginnings and her newfound role. Adrian had personally overseen its design, ensuring it reflected her unique journey. Adrian took her hand gently, his touch grounding her amidst the overwhelming atmosphere. You're not alone, Lila, he whispered, his voice steady and reassuring. We'll face them together. As they descended the staircase, the room fell silent, all eyes turning toward them. Lila could feel the weight of their gazes, some curious, some skeptical, and others outright disapproving. But she held her head high, drawing strength from Adrian's presence and the love they shared. At the base of the stairs, the king and queen awaited them. The queen's expression was unreadable, her regal demeanor giving nothing away. The king, however, offered a small, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. The evening unfolded with a mix of elegance and tension. Adrian introduced Lila to dignitaries, nobles, and influential figures from across the kingdom. Each interaction was a test, and Lila approached them with grace and humility, her genuine nature shining through. But it wasn't long before whispers began to circulate. Lady Celeste, ever the opportunist, took it upon herself to stir the pot. She approached Lila with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You must be overwhelmed, dear, Celeste said, her tone saccharine sweet. It's a lot to take in for someone like you, isn't it? Lila met her gaze calmly. It's certainly different from what I'm used to, she admitted, her voice steady. But I'm here because Adrian believes in me, and I believe in us. Celeste's smile faltered for a moment before she recovered, her eyes narrowing. We'll see if the court shares his faith, she replied before gliding away. As the evening wore on, Adrian led Lila to the center of the ballroom for the first dance. The orchestra struck up a gentle melody, and the crowd watched as they moved together with effortless grace. For a moment, the tension melted away, and it was just the two of them, lost in their own world. You're doing wonderfully, Adrian murmured as they swayed. They're starting to see what I've always known. You're extraordinary. Lila smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. I couldn't do this without you, Adrian. But the true test came during the Queen's toast. As the music faded and the crowd gathered around, the Queen raised her glass, her eyes scanning the room. Tonight we celebrate not only the return of my son, Prince Adrian, but also the remarkable journey of a young woman who has captured his heart, she began, her voice commanding attention. Lila held her breath, unsure of what was coming next. At first, I doubted her place among us, the Queen continued. Her background seemed a world apart from our own. But as I've watched her face every challenge with courage, dignity, and determination, I've come to see that she possesses qualities far more valuable than titles or wealth. The Queen turned to Lila, her expression softening. Lila, you have shown us the true meaning of strength and love. You have earned not only my respect, but also my blessing. Welcome to our family. The room erupted into applause, the sound overwhelming as relief and gratitude washed over Lila. Adrian squeezed her hand, his smile radiant. You did it, he whispered. No, Lila replied, her voice trembling with emotion. We did it. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and warm wishes. Even Lady Celeste, though visibly displeased, kept her distance, her influence finally diminished. Later that night, as the festivities wound down, Adrian and Lila stood on the balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The moonlight bathed them in a soft glow, and the distant sound of laughter floated up from the ballroom below. You've changed everything, Adrian said, his voice filled with awe. Not just for me, but for everyone. You've shown them what it means to truly care, to truly love. Lila leaned into him, her heart full. And you've shown me that even in the darkest times, there's always hope. Together, we've found something worth fighting for. As they stood there wrapped in each other's arms, the future stretched out before them, filled with promise and love. Lila had come from humble beginnings, but she had found her place, not as a queen of wealth or power, but as a queen of hearts, with Adrian by her side. Their story was proof that love could bridge any divide, heal any wound, and transform even the most unlikely of dreams into a beautiful reality. In the months that followed, Lila's life transformed in ways she never could have imagined. The once shy farmer's daughter found herself stepping into a role she never dreamed of: a leader, a voice for the people, and a partner to the prince who had given her his heart. The royal court, once cold and unwelcoming, began to embrace Lila. Her authenticity and compassion won over even the harshest critics. She often ventured into the villages surrounding the kingdom, listening to the concerns of the people and working tirelessly to implement changes that would improve their lives. Adrian stood by her side every step of the way. Together, they launched initiatives to support farmers, artisans, and families in need, ensuring that no one was left behind. The people began to see Lila not just as the prince's partner, but as a beacon of hope and change. Despite their growing responsibilities, Lila and Adrian never lost sight of what had brought them together. They carved out moments of joy amidst their busy schedules, strolling through the palace gardens, sharing quiet meals, and reminiscing about the serendipitous meeting that had changed their lives forever. One day, as they prepared for a festival celebrating the kingdom's rich heritage, Adrian surprised Lila with a special gift. He led her to a secluded corner of the palace grounds, where a new garden had been planted in her honor. The garden was a vibrant tapestry of colors, filled with flowers from every corner of the kingdom. At its center stood a statue depicting a young woman holding a bouquet of wildflowers, a tribute to Lila's journey from humble beginnings to becoming the heart of the kingdom. I wanted to give you something that represents all that you've brought into my life, Adrian said, his voice filled with emotion. This garden is a symbol of your kindness, your strength, and the beauty you shared with all of us. Tears filled Lila's eyes as she looked around. It's perfect, she whispered. Thank you, Adrian, for everything. As the years passed, Lila and Adrian's love only deepened. Their bond became a source of inspiration for the entire kingdom, proving that true love could overcome any obstacle. They faced challenges together, from political tensions to personal losses, but their unwavering support for one another carried them through. Lila's parents visited the palace often, marveling at the life their daughter had built. Her father, once skeptical of her decision to leave the farm, now beamed with pride whenever he saw her addressing the court or working alongside Adrian. "You've made us proud, Lila," he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. "But more than that, you've shown us that dreams can come true, no matter where you come from." Lila smiled, her heart full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you and Mom. You taught me everything I needed to know about resilience, hard work, and love." In time, Lila and Adrian welcomed their own children into the world. Their family became a symbol of hope for the kingdom, a reminder that love could bridge any gap and heal even the deepest wounds. One sunny afternoon, as Lila walked through the garden with her young son and daughter, she paused by the statue at the center. She knelt down, her children's curious eyes watching her every move. "Do you see the statue?" she asked, her voice gentle. "It reminds us that no matter where we start in life, we can achieve incredible things if we believe in ourselves and follow our hearts." Her son tilted his head thoughtfully. "Like you and Dad?" Lila smiled, pulling them close. "Exactly. And one day, you'll create your own story, filled with love, kindness, and courage." Adrian joined them in the garden, wrapping his arms around Lila as they watched their children play. The sun cast a warm glow over them, and the air was filled with laughter and the scent of blooming flowers. Their journey had been far from easy, but it had been worth every moment. Together, they had built a life filled with love, purpose, and joy, a life that proved that even the most unlikely of beginnings could lead to the happiest of endings. And so, the farmer's daughter who became a queen continued to inspire those around her, leaving a legacy of love and hope that would endure for generations to come. The story of Lila and Adrian continued to ripple through the hearts of the kingdom's people. Over the years, their union became the foundation for a more united and prosperous realm. Lila's humble beginnings were a reminder to everyone that greatness was not born of privilege, but of heart, determination, and the courage to dream beyond boundaries. As time passed, Lila and Adrian grew into their roles as both rulers and parents. They instilled values of empathy and kindness in their children, teaching them to understand the struggles of the people they would one day lead. Each child carried a piece of Lila's resilience and Adrian's unwavering strength, creating a new generation ready to continue the legacy their parents had built. The kingdom thrived under Lila and Adrian's guidance. Lila's efforts to connect with the people personally brought about real change. Schools were established in rural areas. Healthcare became accessible to all, and a sense of hope permeated even the farthest corners of the realm. One memorable day, Lila and Adrian inaugurated a cultural festival dedicated to the unity of their people. Representatives from every village and town showcased their traditions, crafts, and stories, celebrating the rich diversity that made the kingdom whole. Lila's idea for the festival stemmed from her own experiences, growing up in a small farming community and witnessing the struggles of ordinary people. As she stood on the stage with Adrian by her side, she addressed the crowd with her signature warmth. "This festival is a celebration of us, of our shared history, our resilience, and the love that binds us together. No matter where we come from, we all have something to contribute to the beauty of this kingdom." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers a testament to the queen who had touched their lives in ways no one else could. Despite the grandeur of her position, Lila never lost sight of who she was. She often visited the countryside, returning to the simple life she had once known. On one such visit, she took her children to the farm where she had grown up. "This is where it all began," she told them, her voice filled with nostalgia. "It wasn't always easy, but every challenge taught me something important, and those lessons brought me to where I am today." Her daughter looked up at her with wide eyes. "Do you miss it, Mama?" Lila smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Sometimes, but I carry it with me wherever I go. It's a part of me, just like it's a part of you. Adrian joined them, wrapping an arm around Lila as they stood under the shade of the old oak tree that had been her favorite spot as a child. You've taught us all that no matter where we come from, we can rise to meet any destiny, he said softly. The years turned into decades, and Lila and Adrian's love story became legend, a tale passed down through generations as a symbol of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of love. When the time came for them to pass the crown to their eldest child, Lila and Adrian did so with full hearts, knowing they had given their all to the kingdom they loved. They retired to a quieter life, spending their days surrounded by family and nature, cherishing the simple joys they had fought so hard to protect. On a golden autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lila and Adrian sat on the porch of their country home, hand in hand. The sound of laughter echoed from the garden where their grandchildren played, a testament to the enduring legacy they had built. Adrian turned to Lila, his eyes filled with the same adoration he had felt from the moment he first saw her. You changed everything, Lila. Not just for me, but for everyone. You've shown the world what love can do. Lila rested her head on his shoulder, her heart full of peace. And you showed me that dreams can take us further than we ever imagined. Together, we created something beautiful, something that will last forever. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they sat in silence, content in the knowledge that their love had not only healed their own hearts, but had also left the world a kinder, brighter place. Their story was one for the ages, a tale of a poor farmer's daughter and a heartbroken prince who found in each other the love they had always needed and, in doing so, transformed a kingdom. Years passed, and the kingdom continued to flourish under the reign of Lila and Adrian's children. The foundation of their rule was built on love, understanding, and compassion, values Lila had nurtured from the very beginning. The kingdom was no longer just a place ruled by a royal family. It was a community bound by common goals and shared dreams. As their children took the reins of the kingdom, Lila and Adrian's story was woven into the very fabric of the land. The people spoke of their unwavering bond and the way they had transformed the kingdom with their love. Statues were erected in their honor, not just as rulers, but as the embodiment of kindness, humility, and hope. One day, many years after they had stepped down from the throne, Lila stood at the window of her cottage overlooking the vast, peaceful landscape. The hills, once barren and ignored, now thrived with crops. The villages that had once struggled now prospered, filled with vibrant communities. Her heart swelled with pride. Adrian walked up behind her, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. We did it, he said softly, his voice filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Everything we dreamed of, everything we fought for, it's all come to life. Lila smiled, turning to face him. It's more than just the land or the people. It's the love we shared that created all of this. It's what has made this kingdom strong. She took his hand and squeezed it. I'm proud of us, proud of the life we've built together. As they stood there watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, they knew their legacy would last for generations. It wasn't just about the changes they had made. It was about the love that had brought them to this moment and would continue to guide their family long after they were gone. In the twilight years of their lives, Lila and Adrian found peace in knowing they had done everything they could for their kingdom. Their children were now adults, ruling with wisdom and compassion, and their grandchildren had inherited the same values of kindness and generosity. One evening, as the sun began to set and the air grew cooler, Lila and Adrian sat together in the garden of their cottage. The world around them seemed to stand still, the only sound being the gentle rustling of the trees and the distant laughter of their grandchildren playing. Lila leaned her head on Adrian's shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence beside her. I never imagined life would be like this, she said softly. When I was just a farmer's daughter, I could never have dreamed that I'd be here, in this peaceful place with you. Adrian placed a kiss on her forehead, his hand resting gently on hers. I never imagined that love could heal so much, Lila. You healed me. You showed me that life wasn't about the crown or the riches. It was about the people we love and the happiness we find in each other. Lila looked up at him, her heart full of gratitude. We have lived a life richer than I ever could have imagined, Adrian. Our love has been the greatest gift. As the stars began to twinkle above them, Lila and Adrian knew that their journey had come full circle. They had found each other when both were broken in different ways, and together they had created something beautiful, something that would endure forever. Their love story wasn't just a tale to be told, it was a living testament to the power of love to heal, to transform, and to create a legacy that would outlast even the greatest kingdoms. And so, as they watched the night sky, Lila and Adrian sat in the quiet comfort of knowing that no matter what came next, their love would never end. It would live on in their children, their grandchildren, and in the hearts of everyone they had touched. A love that had started with two broken souls would forever shine as a beacon of hope and healing, proving that love, in its purest form, could change the world. As time continued to pass, the kingdom that Lila and Adrian had built began to thrive in ways even they hadn't imagined. The once fragile kingdom, bound by the love of a humble woman and a broken prince, had transformed into a powerful, flourishing realm. But it wasn't just their wealth or their power that defined the success of their reign. It was the sense of unity, love, and trust they instilled in the people. Under the leadership of their children, the values that Lila and Adrian had passed on remained the cornerstone of the kingdom's prosperity. Their children, while each having their own unique approach to leadership, were guided by the same principles of empathy and compassion that Lila had lived by her entire life. The land was fertile, the people were happy, and there was a spirit of togetherness that flowed through the kingdom. The legacy of love was carried through generations, and it was clear that this kingdom was not just built on power or wealth, but on the foundation of family, kindness, and shared purpose. Lila and Adrian watched with pride as their children took the throne, continuing to build on what they had started. The family gathered regularly for celebrations where the joys of life were shared. The memories of the struggles they once faced, Lila's humble beginnings, Adrian's heartache, and the dark days they had survived, seemed like distant echoes now, replaced by the warmth of love and fulfillment. One afternoon, Lila stood on the balcony of the royal castle, looking out over the kingdom she had helped shape. Adrian joined her, standing beside her as they took in the view. "You did it, Lila," he said softly, his voice full of admiration. "You gave everything to this kingdom, to us, and now look at it." Lila smiled and turned to him, her heart full. "We did it, Adrian. Together, we turned our pain into something beautiful. We created a world where love is the foundation of everything." They stood there in silence for a moment, hand in hand, watching as their people thrived in the kingdom they had worked so hard to build. They knew that the story of their love was not just a fairy tale, but a reality that would continue to shape the future for generations to come. Years turned into decades, and Lila and Adrian's love continued to flourish, transcending time and circumstance. The kingdom remained strong under the rule of their descendants, but it was the love between the royal couple that was always remembered and cherished most. It was a love story that was told and retold, passed down through generations, not as a tale of royalty or power, but as a tale of deep, enduring love that had changed the lives of all who had witnessed it. One evening, as the sun set on the horizon, casting an amber glow over the castle grounds, Lila and Adrian sat together on the balcony of their private chambers. The sounds of the world below, laughter, music, and the hum of the busy kingdom drifted up to them. But for that moment, they were alone, lost in each other's company. Adrian placed his hand over Lila's, his eyes warm with love. "Do you ever wonder how we got here?" he asked softly. Lila looked out over the kingdom, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I think about it all the time. From the day we met, I never could have imagined that we would end up here, with a kingdom that thrives, a family we're proud of, and a love that never fades." Adrian leaned in and kissed her forehead, his voice low and full of emotion. "Our love has been the heart of everything. It's never just been about ruling a kingdom. It's been about the way we've loved each other, the way we've shared our hearts." Lila closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his words. "And it's the love we've shared that's created this legacy. Our children, our grandchildren, they will carry it forward. It will never end." For a long moment, They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle in the vast sky above. The world around them seemed so vast, so full of possibilities, yet it was in each other's company that they found the greatest peace. And so, as the years passed, Lila and Adrian's bond never weakened. It only grew stronger. They had built a kingdom, yes, but more than that, they had built a legacy of love, one that would last forever. A love that healed, transformed, and inspired. It was a love that would never be forgotten, a love that would echo through time and remain as the heart of the kingdom for generations to come. As the years grew longer and their time in this world drew closer, Lila and Adrian found comfort in knowing their love had truly stood the test of time. Their children, now grown and wise beyond their years, were taking the kingdom into an era of peace and prosperity, carrying forward the love, humility, and compassion that had always been the foundation of their reign. Though the world around them continued to change, the love between Lila and Adrian remained constant, a steady beacon that had guided them through their trials and triumphs. Their home was filled with the laughter of grandchildren and the warmth of their children, and their hearts swelled with pride at all that they had accomplished together. Yet it wasn't the kingdom, the wealth, or the titles that they cherished most. It was the simple, everyday moments, the quiet mornings spent in each other's company, the shared smiles and whispered words of love, and the deep connection they had nurtured over the years. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow across the land, Lila sat beside Adrian in their favorite spot by the garden. Their hands were intertwined, as they had been for so many years. The soft breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and the peaceful sounds of the kingdom below drifted up to them. "Do you remember when we first met?" Lila asked softly, her voice filled with nostalgia.